Guys, I'm just gonna say it. Mortal Kombat feels directionless right now, and honestly, I think a lot of fans feel it too. Not because Mortal Kombat is a bad game franchise per se, not because the games are terrible, but because the franchise genuinely feels uncertain about what it wants to be moving forward. And I think Mortal Kombat 1 exposed that more than ever. Because if you think about it, MK1 should have been the perfect reset for the series. You know, they had a new timeline, they had a fresh start, they had classic characters returning, and even a chance to simplify the lore from MK11's chaotic timeline BS, man. And instead, the future of Mortal Kombat somehow still feels more confusing than ever. Because when you compare MK1 to older eras of Mortal Kombat, there's one huge difference. Older Mortal Kombat games usually felt like they had a clear direction. Even if they were flawed games, even if they were weird games, you understood what those games were trying to be. MK1 feels like a game that's still trying to figure itself out, and honestly, I feel like that's a dangerous place for a franchise this big to be in. But before we go into the details, if you guys don't know me by now, I'm Mr. Frosty Flames, but you can call me Mike. We do anything gaming news, reviews, playthroughs, analysis, etc., and we do it in a chill way with no over editing BS. So if you like that style of content, be sure to hit that sub button and join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Anyways, let's get back to the video. So one thing I think older Mortal Kombat games did really well was commitment. Whether people like them or not, those games usually fully committed to their vision. You know, the arcade era had very clear identity, you know, had that dark atmosphere. It was very mysterious, and it always had that martial arts inspiration with the brutal violence mixed in, along with the simple but iconic storytelling. Everything about old Mortal Kombat felt confident, and then the 3D era happened, and even though those games were divisive, they still had direction. Deadly Alliance, Deception, and even Armageddon all felt like NetherRealm, or Midway at the time, was trying to expand the Mortal Kombat universe. You know, they added a plethora of things like Conquest mode, there was massive lore, there was tons of side content, new realms, and tons of experimentation and world building. Those games genuinely felt ambitious. Even if they were flawed, you could still feel the vision behind them. And then MK9 came out and brought the series back to its roots, and once again there was clear direction. That game knew exactly what it wanted to be. It wanted to modernize classic Mortal Kombat while bringing back the arcade energy and nostalgia, and it worked, and it's one of the greatest Mortal Kombat games ever made. And then MKX came out, and then even though people complained about it back then, MKX still had identity. The game committed hard to, you know, the fast gameplay, the aggression, the pressure, the dark atmosphere, even with the guest characters bringing in horror characters which fit the theme of the game. Love it or hate it, MKX has a very strong personality. And then MK11 kind of shifted towards accessibility, customization, sort of like casual content and cinematic presentation, and again, there's clear direction there even with MK11. And now we get to Mortal Kombat 1, and this is where things start feeling uncertain. See, Mortal Kombat 1 looked like the perfect reset because when it was first revealed, the hype was massive, and on paper this sounded perfect. You know, Liu Kang restarting the timeline was exactly what Mortal Kombat needed. The franchise had become, you know, overly complicated at the time with different mechanics coming from MK11. You know, it was timeline obsessed with, you know, going back in time, going into the future. You know, it was crazy, and it was multiverse heavy and very inconsistent. And this reboot felt like the opportunity to finally simplify everything, you know, a fresh beginning, a clean slate, and even a chance to rebuild Mortal Kombat with a stronger long-term vision. And honestly, at first it actually felt promising. I was very hyped for the trailers, you know, for the game and everything coming out at the time before Mortal Kombat 1 released. You know, I loved seeing the 3D era characters come back. I was like, yo, Havoc's back in the game, Ashra's back in the game, Li Mei, it was crazy. And I was like, man, Liu Kang's timeline is gonna be a banger. And even when I played the story mode, the earlier parts of the story actually felt smaller and more character focused. Characters like Johnny Cage, Baraka, Reptile, Melina, they finally got more depth and sympathy than they've had in years. And the roster felt nostalgic while still appealing to the modern audience. And visually, I felt like MK1 looked incredible. Everything from the animations to the stages to the intros felt polished and cinematic. And for a little while, it genuinely seemed like Mortal Kombat finally found a new path forward. But then the deeper the game went, the more confused everything started feeling, because Mortal Kombat 1 doesn't fully commit to anything. And honestly, this is Mortal Kombat 1's biggest problem. It's like the game never fully commits to one direction. It feels like it's it's constantly trying to satisfy everybody. You know, old school fans, competitive players, casual players, story mode fans, and even just following fighting game trends. And it's doing all of that at the same time. And because of that, the game starts feeling like it's pulled in too many directions. The biggest example of this is obviously the cameo system. Now, personally, I really don't have too much of an issue with cameos. I don't think it's a horrible idea. Sometimes they could be actually really fun, but I wouldn't want that in Mortal Kombat 13 going forward because, you know, it's just to me. But as for MK11, you know, they add flashy combos, I guess, creativity, faster gameplay, or combo extensions, but at the same time, they also make Mortal Kombat 1 feel disconnected from traditional Mortal Kombat gameplay. I say they should have just added the tag mode from MK9 instead, because for a lot of fans, Mortal Kombat has always been about grounded fights, you know, direct combat and classic 1v1 gameplay, and now MK1 suddenly feels partially inspired by assist fighters, so instantly the fan base became divided again. Some people love cameos and others think they completely ruin the flow of the game, and honestly, I feel like that perfectly represents the identity crisis MK currently has, because the franchise no longer feels confident in what it actually wants to be. And the directionless feeling isn't just gameplay related either, it affects the single player side of the game too, because after MK11, a lot of people expected, you know, more content, deeper customization, even a crypt exploration that expanded on the awesome MK11 crypt, with more side modes and more replayability, but instead, Mortal Kombat 1 introduced invasions. And honestly, invasions never fully felt like the next evolution of Mortal Kombat's side content. It felt repetitive really quickly for a lot of players, and compared to older Mortal Kombat side content like, you know, Conquest, Motor Combat, the Crypt, Chess Combat, Mortal Kombat 1's content just feels less memorable. And that's another reason why the franchise feels uncertain right now, because it feels like Mortal Kombat keeps replacing systems instead of evolving them naturally, and I'd rather take like even a Chess Combat or Motor Combat over Invasions mode. That's how bad it is. And even the story lost focus again, because at the beginning of Mortal Kombat 1's story, it actually felt refreshing. You know, the rebooted character dynamics were interesting, the smaller scale felt good, you know, I loved going back to Shang Tsung as the main villain. I thought they were just going back to square one. The universe felt more grounded, and for once, it seemed like Mortal Kombat was finally slowing down and focusing on the characters again, instead of constantly trying to destroy reality. But then eventually, you guys know, the story goes right back into the multiverse chaos with the gotcha, and then, you know, Kronika is actually Shang Tsung from a different timeline. You know, they had alternate timelines, different versions of characters, and massive universe ending stakes, and suddenly the reboot stops feeling like a true fresh start. It starts feeling like Mortal Kombat repeating the same cycle again and again and again. And honestly, I think that disappointed a lot of people, with me included, because the franchise had the chance to simplify itself, but instead it just went back into the timeline insanity again, and that is horrible. And I think the biggest problem right now is that nobody really knows what Mortal Kombat's future even looks like anymore. You know, what does the next game even become? Are they gonna continue cameos? Are they gonna remove them? Are they gonna reboot things again? Are they gonna go back to MKX style gameplay, or are they gonna slow down and go to MK11? Are they gonna focus more on casual content, lean into esports, say? Or are they just gonna create another timeline shift for the story? The franchise genuinely feels uncertain about its own future, and the recent support situation surrounding Mortal Kombat 1 only made that feeling worse, because now fans are questioning NetherRealm's long-term plans, how much support future games will even get, and whether the studio itself knows where Mortal Kombat should go next. And honestly, that uncertainty is why the franchise feels directionless, because Mortal Kombat 1 doesn't feel like a clear future of Mortal Kombat. It feels like another sad experiment, and I think Mortal Kombat really does need a strong identity again. again. You know, the characters are still iconic, the lore still has insane potential, the visuals will still be incredible, you know, the fatalities will still be cool, the gameplay foundation is still fun, but the franchise desperately needs a stronger long-term vision again, because older Mortal Kombat eras felt memorable partly because they were so committed hard to their identity. The arcade era had the mystery and the atmosphere, the 3D era had the ambition and the fun experimentation, MK9 had that nostalgia and energy, while MKX had that aggression and chaos, and even MK11 had a very clear focus on presentation and casual content. But Mortal Kombat 1, it just sucks and it's directionless, and because of that, the entire franchise feels uncertain going forward. And honestly, I say all of this because I genuinely care about Mortal Kombat. This franchise is legendary and it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. I think it has some of the coolest characters in gaming history. It has some of the coolest lore. It has some of the coolest concepts, and that's exactly why it's frustrating seeing the series feel this uncertain, because Mortal Kombat should feel bigger and more confident than this. Like, you know, say what you want about Tekken or Street Fighter, they're rising up, and if Mortal Kombat doesn't, you know, adapt, they're gonna rise higher than Mortal Kombat. But, you know, I really wish, you know, prosperity to every fighting game franchise, but, you know, Mortal Kombat does hold a special place in my heart, and I want to see them succeed more than others. And hopefully someday, NRS finally figures out what Mortal Kombat truly wants to become. Hopefully by Mortal Kombat 13 or Mortal Kombat 2, whatever they're gonna call it. But all of that is just my dream of a perfect Mortal Kombat future. But let me know what you guys think down below. What direction do you want Mortal Kombat to go in going forward? Do you want them to remove cameos? What do you want the story to be? What characters do you want to be in it? Comment down below and tell me your thoughts and stuff. I'll heart most of your comments. I love reading all your comments, even if I don't reply to them all, but I'll try. Anyways, thank y'all for watching. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Join the army. Mr. Frosty Flames out. Ciao.